and I'm president of ConsumerWatchdog, and we're here today to talk about new evidence of the Golden State gouge. Californians are now paying $1.30 in LA above what the rest of America is paying for their gas. And it's well over $1 ever since February around the rest of California in the differential with America. The Golden State is getting gouged. And today we're going to talk about how serious a problem this is for people who have to make choices between filling up their tank and paying their mortgage, and what we can do about it. And that's what's really new today, is we're actually talking about what needs to be done and what has to get done for there to be justice for the people of California. And that's why I'm glad to be here with Tom Steyer. So I'm going to run through the numbers in this analysis and let Tom talk about the problem. Tom's a businessman and an activist, and has been very involved in California politics. We know the California experience in gas prices is historically unprecedented. If you look at the graph to the left, which is also in the analysis that is online at ConsumerWatchdog.org, you will see that going back through 2005, we have never had such a great gap in gas prices with America as we have right now. And that gap, historically, is particularly onerous and egregious because crude prices are now below $45 a barrel. The last time gas prices were at $4 a gallon, crude prices were at over $100 a barrel. So the money that is being made off the pockets of Californians at the pump is going into the pockets of oil refiners. Their costs are going down, their prices are sky high, and the new evidence we have from state and government and corporate records is very clear. So let's go to that first slide. The California gouge gap. Since February, after taking out the difference between California and U.S. gas taxes, about a 15-cent difference, we have paid as a state almost $5 billion more to the oil refiners for our gas. This figure is based on our relative consumption in California versus America and the relative gas prices. $5 billion has been bled out of the Californians' pockets by the oil refiners, and it's gone directly to their profits. In July, if we go to the next slide, the gouging gap between American and California prices is $1.2 billion. There has never been this type of gouging in this state before, and it's got to stop. $1.2 billion more out of Californians' pocket is what we paid for our gasoline. And you want to know why? This is the most recent state figure. The margins, the amount of money that goes in each gallon of gas from our pockets to the oil refiners has gone up threefold in the second week in July. Traditionally, 48 cents of every gallon of gas goes to the refiners for their profits and costs. This is after crude oil and other costs. In the second week of July, $1.61 of every gallon went to the oil refiners' profits and costs. $1.61 of our $4 a gallon is going right to the oil refiners. Usually it's 48 cents. The oil refiners are getting rich at our expense. And the gap, by the way, just 2 weeks ago when we were looking at it, was $1.17. That was a record. You can see there is nowhere in the last 15 years where we've come close to $1.61 in refiner margins. And I'll show you further how it breaks down. A year ago, gasoline was around $4 a gallon in July 2014, but the lion's share, $2.58, was crude oil costs. Refiner margins, as they've been over 15 years, 47 cents. July of 2015, crude is at $1.35. That's the cost for every gallon of gas. $1.61 going right to the refiners. They're charging us the same amount for gasoline, but instead of the money being paid for crude oil, they're keeping it for themselves for profitability. And they're doing it because they can, because there's no laws to stop them yet. We'll go to the next slide. This is a further breakdown that shows historically what's happened. In February, we had our first refineries go down and the price of gas start to skyrocket. We could let Tim and Evan. in December, that was when we saw that crude oil prices really tanked. You see the percentage here that goes to crude oil? That's when you saw it really decline, August, December. And as that declined, so did the price of gas. After cap and trade and other environmental laws took place in January, we had really historically low gas prices. That's when the refineries started to break. That's when the price started to go up. The oil companies have kept us on short supplies, and as a result, we have seen this big margins ever since February grow and grow and grow till July to this unprecedented state. We'll go to the next slide. The next slide shows specific oil refiner profitability. Valero, the fourth largest refiner in California, is one of the few refiners that breaks down their profits by California refining business. Their profits, Valero's profits in California, in the second quarter went up 1,100% from 24 million this time last year, this quarter last year, second quarter last year, to 294 million this quarter. This is pure profits. And all of the money we pay at the pump, above the national average, the lion's share of that dollar anyway, is going to companies like Valero on their refining margins. An 1,100% jump in profitability 1 year over the next. That is obscene. And we'll see what Valero's CEO had to say about it, Valero's executive. On a recent investor call, George Simmons said, our profitability on this coast is going to be determined about whether we continue to have refinery outages. Some of these refinery outages we've been seeing, will they continue or not, will really determine how strong the West Coast market will be. When a market's profitability is determined upon whether or not refineries are out or not, this is a broken market. The other admission that Mr. Simmons made is that they were exporting record amounts of gasoline to Mexico and Latin America at the time of this crisis. And we've been tracking those ships. And Valero's executive acknowledged that this is a big part of their business. We'll go to the next slide. Chevron does not break down its California refining business, but 54% of its business in refining is in California. And they tell us what they make in profitability on their refining business. So in the second quarter, Chevron's refining business, its profitability grew 41% higher than the same quarter last year. $214 million growth. They doubled their average profits. And they did that because the lion's share of the refineries are in California. And the profitability is even greater. But we don't know exactly how much they made for California. We just know they made a lot. And again, Chevron's executive, if you look at this next quote in the second quarter profit, said, tight product supply, primarily on the West Coast, boosted refining and marketing margins and increased earnings by $165 million between quarters. The oil refiners are acknowledging that they are making money hand over fist by keeping us running on empty. That's got to stop because it sounds an awful lot like our electricity crisis in 2000. We'll go to the next slide. This is the oil refining business in California. We know Chevron's profits grew. We know Valero's profits grew. Tesoro is reporting its profits this afternoon. And I will shave my beard if they did not have similar results in profitability to Valero, if their profits have not grown. I will shave my head if they did not have a profitable quarter. The other refiners, Exxon, Shell, Phillips 66, don't report their oil profits or their refining profits. They don't report them. So we don't know how much they're making off California. But let's just go back to the first chart, Cody. But if we see the same type of pattern as we have in these three big refiners, we're seeing huge profits, and that's why I'm so glad Tom Steyer's here today, because Tom, in addition to being a businessman who understands this business and an activist, has led 2 ballot measure campaigns against tens of millions, probably over 100 million in refiner money, and succeeded. Prop 39 and Prop 23. He's defended our greenhouse gas laws effectively in this state by defeating the referendum against them. He's promoted green energy, and he's taken on Valero and Tesoro, and he's beat them. And I'm very proud that he's here today to flex his muscle for the consumers of this state. If you look on that wall behind us, for people in the room, that is a list of our Rage for Justice honorees. And it's a very interesting list of people who really stand for something and speak up about it, and they speak up regardless of what society thinks, because they believe in justice. In 2011, Tom was our Philip Burton Public Service Award. And for those of you who don't remember Philip Burton, he was a congressman from San Francisco who, his biographer John Jacobs wrote a book called Rage for Justice, and he was described by Jacobs as terrorizing the terrorizers. He was described as a guy whose ceaseless passion for the disenfranchised and the poor just shined through. And he used his power as the most powerful Democrat in Congress to help farm workers, to help people who didn't have a voice. And so I'm really proud to be here with Tom, because he has cut out of that mold, and we made a very wise choice in giving him that Philip Burton Award in 2011. Thanks.
So thank you, Jamie, and good morning. My name is Tom Steyer. And if you listened to what Jamie was saying, the gasoline market in California is broken. It is not competitive or open. I don't know which part of what he was talking about is more upsetting. The fact that the oil companies are raising gasoline prices on Californians at a time when the price of crude oil has gone down by half, or the fact that we seem unable to do anything about it. But let's start with the basic point that Jamie was making. The oil refiners are making historic profits. And they're shipping gasoline out of California to foreign countries at a time when they're claiming there's a shortage here at home. So I don't understand that. I don't understand how Valero could be making 11 times more money and shipping gas out of the state. The LA Times reported last week that the oil refinery's margin has more than doubled. Jamie was saying in July it more than tripled. I think you'd have to call that good old-fashioned highway robbery. So it is definitely time for us to find out what is going on. At a time when the consumers of this state are spending almost $5 billion in half a year of after-tax money out of their pockets to get the same gasoline that everybody else in the United States gets, we have to ask the question how it could happen. It's $383 per household after-tax money in California in 6 months. That's what we're talking about. And as Jamie said, that means people are spending much more of their money getting to work than they have before, so that what they really are able to bring home and spend on the other necessities of life is that much less. I am calling on the legislature to address this problem. We need somebody to take on big oil. There has to be a rigorous accounting for this behavior. We absolutely need to protect working Californians from these gigantic and unprecedented price spikes. People need to be fairly treated at the pump. And today, I hope we're starting a conversation about the best principles for a legislative fix, should someone in the legislature want to take on big oil. Any measure to drive down prices should include, but not be limited to, and this is available on our website, require the oil companies to fully disclose their profits from refining gasoline in California and the amount of taxes they pay to the state. Require oil refiners in California to give the public advance notice of planned maintenance and outages at their oil refineries. Require oil companies to have a plan to maintain a minimum level of gasoline reserves in order to prevent price spikes, and increase the legal and financial penalties for oil companies if they illegally conspire to raise gas prices. Let me say this: what's going on is not right. If the legislature and the courts will not act, I believe the citizens will have to take matters into their own hands. We are determined to find a way to independently hold big oil accountable for these outrageous gas prices. Nobody in LA or anywhere in California should have to sacrifice their hard-earned living while the oil companies are multiplying their profits. Either there is something nefarious going on here, or the structure of the market itself is unacceptable. In either case, we need to fix the problem. Thanks.
Any questions in the room for us? And then we'll go to the line in a second.
I'm just wondering, why do you suppose that in the last week they've begun to lower prices when they're still making the exports and the refinery outage is still going on? And why is there this sudden cutoff when you reach the LA County line? If you're driving over the Grapevine, you'll find the price at Fraser Park is $1 lower than it is in Gorman. All that's in between is a county line. How do you account for that?
Well, I think the structure of zone pricing in the gasoline industry is something that is a mystery to us all. But I do believe that the oil refiners have made so much money that at some point the people who are making our same blend of gas are going to continue to try to bring some more in and bring the inventory levels up. Part of what Tom was talking about as a proposal is by requiring public disclosure and open information, opening the books about refinery outages, other players who make CARB gasoline, our type of gasoline, will have more notice about when it's needed in a market and can start to be more competitive. And that's part of the problem now, is that it takes 2 to 3 weeks to bring supplies to make our gasoline and to bring it into the market. And if other players who want to make money on that enterprise don't know that that's needed because the refiners don't share information, the lack of transparency keeps these prices artificially high for the 4 refiners that control 78% of the market, and there are 4 that control 78%. But I believe that there is an inevitable economic pressure here. Then you have when you have crude oil at $45 a barrel, you have a month of July where we had virtually no imports and a lot of exports. Something's got to give. These refiner margins can't last forever, but they will continue to haunt us periodically if we don't regulate the market. And $5 billion is a pretty good highway robbery. Maybe the refiners aren't going to keep trying their luck for much longer while the legislature has 1 more month in session and people like Tom Steyer are getting angry and talking to groups like ours. I don't know if you want to address that, Tom.
Well, I think the question actually implies the answer. What you ask is, why are the prices going down? As if people are allowed to set prices in a free market. That's not the way free markets work, just to be clear. In a free market, people compete to sell their goods. And when there are gigantic margins like this, people rush in to sell, and it squeezes the margin very fast. The question here is, why isn't this a free and competitive market so that someone could have the ability to set price on Californians wherever they choose? That's the question we're asking. So the question that you posed, in fact, implies the problem.
Yeah.
And that's the problem that needs to be saved. And how are we expected to have an answer to how they choose to set price when we don't have the ability to understand, to find out all the underlying facts? Okay. That's the problem.
Another question in the room, and then we'll go to the line in a second.
Have you identified lawmakers who will carry the legislation, and if so, how effective do you think it will be when the legislature and Congress have tried for decades to get more disclosure from oil companies?
But I mean, I think that hopefully Tom's call today will be heard by the leaders in both houses, and someone will come forward. But Tom, do you want to address what you think the political establishment are doing, what we need to do if they don't move?
Look, I think that we have an effective legislature with a lot of very talented and dedicated people working in it. We have a very good governor. This is a situation which cries out for action on the part of elected officials. We don't know exactly who is going to answer the call. But the fact of the matter is, this is a traditional function of government going right back to Teddy Roosevelt in the early 20th century when he was trying to break up trusts. There's something going on where the citizens of California are being disadvantaged, and their elected, we believe their elected officials are perfectly positioned to find out what's going on and represent them. And that's what we hope happens.
If they don't act, would you consider running for governor?
That is a long way off. The fact of the matter is, there are a number of things that we think should happen, and that we believe that our legislature is a very good one and will act. But we're trying to bring attention to this issue and say something has to be done here. This is no longer an optional question. When you see this kind of money going out the door in after-tax dollars from people's pockets and right into the profits of a very small number of companies. That just can't be right.
Tom, I have a question. How do we compare to other states like Georgia, parts of the South? I mean, what do the numbers look like there for consumers? You know?
I have it. Do you have it by state?
Cody prices by state, but in terms of gas prices, we're in $2 zone around the South, right? I would say under $2.50. Probably, I mean, in the southern states and the Gulf states, we're around $2, and we're paying $3.80, $3.90 at a pump in California. When people travel across the country this summer, they really notice this. And I think that the Californians are truly sick of it. So that's, this is, look, these proposals that Tom outlined, they have to be acted upon. They have to be done.
Jamie, I know in the past, and I'm sorry I arrived late, so I'm not sure if you've already covered this. In regards to the windfall profits tax, I think that's one of the things that you'd like to see the legislature do. There are those who are opposed to it say that would just give more incentive to the oil companies to then charge it back to the consumer as a result of getting that tax.
Well, I think that Tom has circulated, and I think we have copies here of those 4 principles that we've handed out. Let me give one to Rick, but the principles for legislation and or any type of legislative action, one of them is just greater financial penalties for the conspiring to fix prices. So one way to handle that would be a windfall profits tax. In other words, tax companies when their margins exceed a certain amount. But another way to do it, which is embodied in those principles, is simply require that they have a plan to fundamentally fuel the market and live up to that plan, so we don't ever get there where you have to have that big problem.
Because once again, I'd say your question assumes the problem exists. That basically people can, if there's a tax added, they can simply pass that on extraordinary profits. They can just make their profits that much more extraordinary in order to keep their net the same. And the implication there is that no one's going to come in and compete with them, that they can set the price they choose to set. And that's exactly the issue we're trying to solve. What we're saying is this is a market that is not functioning for Californian consumers. It is functioning for the people who are running the market, and that has got to change. So your question itself implies the problem and assumes the problem will continue. And what we're determined to do is to end the problem.
But then you would concede that if there is a windfall profits tax, that they might pass that along to consumers.
What I'm conceding is that this seems like a market where there isn't an open, competitive, normal Econ 101 competition. Yeah, that's what we're complaining about. It doesn't seem as if when people are making 11 times more money year over year and no one comes in to compete with them, that implies it's not an open market. And what we know is people have to get to work. They don't have a choice about whether they buy gasoline if they want to get to work. That's the fact of the matter. So therefore, we are over a barrel, but somebody has got to stand up and say, you don't have a right to do this. We want to fix the market itself.
There is a way to structure a windfall profits tax so the money goes right back to the motorist and can't be passed on. It could also be structured so that it comes out of a shareholder profits and not something that could be passed on in the market. So by no means are we conceding anything. Yeah, go ahead, Ivan, and I'll go to the line after.
Jamie, the industry argues that, well, it's the blended gas. We don't, and there's just not, we don't have the kind of availability that some other, the Southeast was raised. There's greater access to gas because they don't have this special blend. How do you respond to what the industry is saying?
Well, I mean, look, in 1999, the Air Resources Board set the cost of our special blended gasoline, basically on the retrofitting of the refineries, at 10 cents a gallon. 10 cents extra a gallon. The refiners have already amortized that, so I don't believe it's anywhere near 10 cents a gallon. But the oil refiners are charging a lot more now, $1.40 a gallon, and they're taking home $1.30 $1.61 a gallon in the second week of July. So clearly, these huge profits are because the oil refiners can. Now, is our special blend of gasoline more expensive to make? No. Is it harder to import? Potentially. But when our oil refineries keep going down in unprecedented numbers and we have imports being turned away from the state to go to South America and we have exports going out, the oil refiners are taking those actions to keep us running on low inventories. I like our clean air in LA. I lived here 20 years ago and it was not this clean. And the cost of the gas to make it is really pennies, if anything. But the oil refiners have one gun they can hold to our head because they're the ones who make the gas and bring it in. And I don't believe it's the clean burning fuel that's the gun they're holding to our head. I believe it's the fact that they don't have to have adequate inventories to fuel this market. And I think if we tell the oil refiners they have to keep this market with adequate inventories, they have to have a plan when their refineries run down, and they can't financially gouge, or they're going to pay a legal penalty if we catch them. That's going to be what keeps the price of fuel reasonable. You know, we need cheaper gas and we need cleaner fuel. And we can have both. And we do. But we need to move to a place where we don't have these price spikes when the oil refiners choose to run us on lower inventory. So, you know, there's two ways to go on this thing. We've had this cleaner standard for 15 years, and we only have these really big differentials when we see very unusual maintenance activity in this industry that seems to be producing their profits. I think the bigger problem right now, frankly, is the oil companies are not making a lot of money on crude oil because it's dirt cheap. And so they're taking it out on Californians because that's a place that they can, because there are no laws that prevent it. We need to change the laws to prevent the oil refiners from punishing California. Tom, do you want to say anything about the clean blend or the?
No, I think you pretty much covered it.
Should I open the line up? Let me try doing this.
The participant lines are unmuted.
Is there anyone on
I have a question.
Yes, who's this?
I have a question.
I'm sorry, can you just identify yourself before you ask it?
Yeah, my name is Kevin Smith with the Los Angeles News Group.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, I have to kind of back up on something that Tom, you were talking about, and I'm sure this is printed out somewhere where I didn't see it, but you're calling on the legislature to address the problem. There are 4 bullet points you mentioned. One was require oil companies to fully disclose profits and the amount of taxes they pay to the state. Another one was give public notice of planned outages and maintenance. Fourth one, I think, was increased legal and financial penalties. And I think I missed the one in between those.
Require them to maintain a minimum level of gasoline reserves in order to prevent price spikes.
Okay. And I have another question for Tom. You know, all the refinery problems we've seen that began in February, with Tesoro and with ExxonMobil down in Torrance. Do you feel, I mean, people would say, well, you know, they're changing from summer to winter blend. They've got maintenance issues, this and that. Do you think the bottom line of all this is that they are purposely either extending problems or they're creating problems to raise gas prices? In other words, do you think this is a concerted effort on their part when there are, in fact, maybe no real problems in some cases?
I honestly do not know. What I do know is this market is dysfunctional. That's the only thing I know. Why it's dysfunctional, we don't have the information and they refuse to give it up. So the fact of the matter is what's going on is we can see a market that has been dysfunctional for a long period of time and where they make excuses for it's not functioning properly. And as a result of it not functioning properly, they're making record profits. The question is, regardless of intent, why do we allow a dysfunctional market to damage California citizens the way it's happening? That's the question. Not the intent is something that we should find out, but the fact is California consumers are being damaged either way, and it's either intentional or unintentional, but either way we have to fix this market.
Is there anyone else on the line who'd like to ask a question?
Yeah, Jamie, it's David Baker at the San Francisco Chronicle. You guys sort of touched on this a little bit before, but I just wanted to be a bit more specific. In terms of the legislature, I know you personally have talked over some of these ideas with the legislators over the last few months. Is there anyone there in Sacramento who's expressed some interest in possibly carrying this and being the kind of champion that you're talking about?
We have talked to some people in the Senate, and frankly, really frankly, I think they're waiting. They're waiting for people like Tom to step up and say that this is really needed, and we need to get it done one way or another. And I think I'm hopeful that in the last month and 6 weeks of session, that this can get done with Tom's help. But I think our commitment to doing this goes long beyond that if it's necessary, and that's what's important. Is that if the legislature is unwilling to do this, it still needs to get done. I think that we'll be a lot more likely with Tom's help to get some legislative action, and we'll see how far it goes. The oil companies are the biggest lobby in Sacramento. And I feel fairly confident that we'll have a debate on this, and I don't know if they'll be able to stop it from happening in the State House or not.
Yeah, thanks.
We got 2 more questions, maybe.
Why are you proposing this now when the prices are actually starting to go down?
Because when the prices go down, but they're still $1.15 above the rest of the nation, there's a huge problem. They've only gone down this week by maybe 15 cents, I think, and the prices are artificially high, and we will continue to be plagued by this problem. And I don't believe the appetite for reform for the people of California is going to go away, no matter what the price of gas is, because they've already lost hundreds of dollars per person on this gouge. Any question?
Yeah.
Tom?
Jamie, the figures that you've shown us do not at all reflect the price spike of July. They only reflect the price spikes of the second quarter.
Well, the corporate figures. Yeah.
And the oil companies waited until after July 1st to raise their prices this time. I wonder if you think this is manipulation somehow of the prices, because if you recall, we heard radio and TV reports for several days prior to July 1st that prices would be going up on July 1st. Why were they putting out the word of that if they hadn't planned this all?
We don't know. We do not know what their intentions are. We don't know. We can see prices at the pump, but the information is not available. In fact, the way I understand it is the state of California has to pay for information from the oil companies to find out what's happened, which is an amazing fact. As citizens, you would think in this kind of crisis, when people are being charged this amount of money with these kinds of margins, the idea that the state of California isn't given the information, doesn't have an absolute right to know what's going on, is incredible. And until we get the information, we really can't draw conclusions about intention or what behavior. But what we can see for sure is the result. And the result is completely unacceptable.
You're using the word you're using the word dysfunctional here. Is that a PC word for something else? Is there another word that you could say?
There's nothing PC about me. No, I think if you spend a lot of time in markets, there is a theoretical idea of a perfect market where you have unlimited competitors driving the price to the marginal cost. So there's an economic idea in people's heads. And the further you get from that economic ideal, the less well the market is functioning. In this case, this is a market that is functioning horribly, that is very far from our idea of the way a capitalist market is supposed to work. A capitalist market is supposed to work to the advantage of consumers, to deliver goods and services in the best way at the lowest price. That's just not happening. And that's why I said dysfunctional. It's actually, I'm not being cute. It is not functioning well. And we can until we get the information, we won't know for sure why, but we know for darn sure it is not functioning to the advantage of Californian citizens.
Thanks. And I should say, just to be clear, that Tom was in the world of business for many years before this, watching Wall Street as a hedge fund manager. So when he talks from serious knowledge of the market. Okay, we're gonna close down the news conference now. And if anybody has questions, you can reach us on our phone lines later.